Welcome to On Air with Kash. Our guest today is a certified mediator and consultant. She attained her doctorate in clinical psychology from Pepperdine University, as well as her Master of Arts with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. She is the director of client relations at Baron Family Law and was awarded and honored as one of Sacramento Business Journals' top 40 under 40. Please welcome D.r Alea Baron.
Thanks, Kash. It's great to be on the show today.
Alea, it is so great to have you on. For the audience, Alea and I go way back. We've been friends since college. We've had experience like traveling, and we've had a lot of insightful discussions. I remember when you were going to school, I always knew you would end up where you are right now with the kind of career that you've had. You're definitely someone who, when I was going through some hard times growing up, you were always there to listen to me and to guide me through some stuff. And I'm just so proud of you for your top 40 under 40.
Thank you, Kash. I'm proud of you and all of you've accomplished, and seeing you grow into this man in the world and having your own podcast is certainly inspiring as well. And it's great to see both, you come up in the world and, working so hard myself and seeing all your accomplishments. I know the drive it takes to get here.
That it does. Even just in college and in school, when we were starting our lives, like in our 20s, we did so much fun stuff, whether it was traveling and just, having adventures in LA, but you were always on top of your studies. You were taking so many different classes, internships, you've had so many degrees. You are one of the most badass people that I know. So, I've always respected your drive, and it shows, and your work has definitely paid off.
Well, you've met a lot of people, so that's a huge compliment.
When we talk about your journey and what got you on the path that you want to, I know that your parents got divorced when you were young, and you used poetry and drawing and artistic endeavors as a voice of expression. And because of the experiences that you had, it made you very empathic to people who were going through similar things. And it got you into clinical psychology, and that was a marriage family counselor with your practice.
Yeah. So you have a great memory for one. So my parents, they did go through a divorce, kind of when I was in high school, and then it kind of finished right when I was in college. And, it was a tough time. And I will say that, any parents going through a divorce, that they're sometimes not aware of what the children are going through, because there's so much legalese and working through the problems and, kind of that fighting and back and forth and figuring out the finances, that kind of sometimes the kids get lost in the emotionality of it all. And I know for me, I felt like I was a little bit lost, and I kind of dived into my studies, but still it was, I think, a hard time. And you mentioned art and poetry, and that is something that I used a lot to express myself. I liked writing songs, and I liked, singing. Of course, to Linkin Park was really popular when I was going through all this, and to let all that energy out. And as you said, the empathy component, I try to use a lot of that working with my clients now. So kind of the trajectory I took from that, my parents getting divorced, wrestling with the emotions of that, studying and working hard, I really kind of put my energies into focusing on psychology. I really wanted to understand people, what made them tick, where they find hope and joy in the day, and how they get through really hard times. And so from there, of course, I got my master's in marriage and family therapy from Pepperdine, and then my doctorate in clinical psychology as well. To bridge the gap there, I found that therapy wasn't my end all for what I wanted to do with my career. I really love being out and around people. And my sister is a family law attorney, and we both kind of found this path, and we decided, okay, what are we going to do with these two careers that seemingly overlap, but no one's really doing anything in the field of legal work with the field of psychology. And we thought, wow, what an amazing collaboration that would be to join the two. So for Baron Family Law, I'm the director of client relations, and I also do private mediations with my sister. And we have a full staff of other attorneys doing private out-of-court mediations, as well as litigated divorces and child custody and domestic violence.
Wow.
Sorry, that was a mouthful.
I look at what you and Alea Baron, your sister, who's the attorney who you just mentioned. I'm just so proud of both of you. And you both are masters in your fields, and you came together to start this successful business in Sacramento, and you're providing this help for the people that need it.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, partly because of COVID, it kind of really expanded our ability to work all over the state, just because most of the courthouses are now doing their hearings virtually. So we have clients in Orange County, Los Angeles, all over Northern California. So it really has expanded our reach. So that's kind of neat. We do try to use all of these components of psychology and mindfulness and really being focused on and in tuned with the clients, and especially clients that have children. We have a huge focus on what's in the best interest of the children and how do you really use those expectations to facilitate that in the courtroom. And helping parents, struggling with divorce, really reflect back on, what's going on for your children, what's in their best interest. Yes, the other parent may have a different bedtime at their house, or you may not like their new spouse or partner, but, is that worth going back to court? Is that worth going and talking to the mediator? Is that worth traumatizing your child to really, meet their needs? And we try to use that psychology of the child, developmental psychology, as well as relational psychology, to help assist parents co-parent better together and also really focus on their children. And I guess kind of to relate it back to you and I, having gone through divorces as a child or a teenager, having the parents really be present for what the kids are going through, I think really is meaningful as the kids grow up and become teenagers and then become successful adults as well.
You hit the nail right on the head with that. And that was the interesting thing about how we met, was because, like you said, you were in high school. It was an awkward birthday where it was like, okay, let's go out to dinner, and you can kind of tell something was up. And then they waited till the day after my birthday that year to say, okay, dad's moving out. I'm like, oh, okay, I know where this is going. And then it wasn't until like right when I graduated college and my brother graduated from high school, it was official. And then shortly after that, there's, been other stuff that I've been open about, just like growing up in the entertainment industry, really growing up fast and young, being 15 and exposed to a lot. There was a lot of emotional baggage that I was carrying for years, like through my teens. And so by the time when the divorce was happening, it was just really the peak of everything. That's when I had the lethal arrhythmia. And that was at a point when I was making the changes in my life. And when I met you, and I think why we clicked is because of the kind of person that you are. And we were both going through similar things at a similar time. So I felt like you and I really connected with that, because it was like I was so miserable on the inside. I was getting eaten up. And so you were like part of a core friend group where it was like, it's okay to be happy again. It's okay to experience happiness and travel and do fun things together. And I always felt that no matter what I was going through in my life in my 20s, and we were both starting our lives, you were someone that helped me out a lot, and we're always there to listen, to just be a friend, just being there for one another. So again, I thank you for the role that you played in my life. Then there was another moment, there was a whole other set of things that I think I was going through. That was really when I was like, there are some scars in here that just have not healed, and I need to get to the root of this. And then that's when I really got into therapy. I got to the core of things. I felt like kind of in the family environment I was with, I wasn't comfortable talking about things. And then I felt like when I really took a stand, that's when I felt like my career started to take off. I was like starting to book roles and producing movies, and then the podcast. And then, we both have experienced some losses. I know recently, Benjamin, we talked a lot. I know what he was going through now that I've really taken the time and done the work and used those tools. That was another thing I wanted to do with the show too. And that's why I want to have you on and really talk to professionals as well, because it's like there's letting people know it's okay to talk about things. We go through these highs and lows. The reason why I feel like you do what you do is because of experiences that you've had, and why, I do what I do is because I know firsthand, and I've, it's taken that life experience and losses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you've kind of touched on a lot of different points that I feel very connected to, us traveling. I remember us being in Paris and Europe and, traveling the countryside and just really seeing how incredible and beautiful life is.
Oh, yeah.
I think, there is that component of social media. Like I remember that this was back when there wasn't Instagram, it was only Facebook, but, we'd post these incredible pictures and posts of our cool life and our friendship and these travels. And underneath there is a real struggle. And I think it takes a lot of courage to not only have that reflected in social media, but that courage to also then come on your own show and be able to present to who's listening and potentially fans of yours, and know that there's a real person underneath, and that some of that comes from the drive of what we've experienced in our childhood and our past, and maybe how fast we did have to grow up because our parents weren't emotionally available, or they weren't physically available, or they were allowing us to experience life that was, something that we were too young to really experience. And you coming on your own show and sharing how vulnerable you are, but also that strength and courage that there's these two or maybe many sides of us that people don't always see, especially with, I think, social media, because we all have these lives on social media and everything can look so great, but that doesn't mean there aren't all these significant challenges that you face every day. Sometimes waking up and making sure you get the day done, get the job done, and then also meeting people, and you hear these stories about how much they've had to overcome, and then it's like, oh my God, am I good enough? Like, oh, I'm on your podcast today. Like, oh my God, what made me like good enough to even be on Kash's podcast? I mean, and I've watched your show, and I've seen the other talents that you have on here, and it's incredible. And I feel, so appreciative to be considered someone that you would want to have on air. And I think a lot of us do wake up and say like, okay, like I'm doing my very best, but like, is it good enough? And I mean, really it is. And then also, what can we do more of? So we keep having that courage to keep making steps forward and to believe in ourselves so that we are in this place and, can give back.
Oh, well, I'm flattered. And you deserve to be here, and I'm honored to have you on. And that's how I felt about you when I met you. I'm just thinking, okay, I'm just this goofball gets out of college, is figuring stuff out. I mean, you're like getting your doctorates, and that, I think you mentioned that thing about social media where, yes, our lives look great. We're traveling and we're going out. And of course, that was before Instagram. But at first glance, people, oh, who's that? Or, there was like, everyone was always in love with you. And then they'd meet you, and then you're like, there was a lot more to you than just how you looked. It was like, oh my God, Leah's the real deal. I mean, she's like going to school, she's driven, she's motivated. So I think that was one of those things too, where, social media so much looks a certain way at first glance. Like I even say this now with mine, where it's like, I'm conscious of it, where it's like, if you didn't know me and you just, oh, look at this jackass, thinks he's on a red carpet, he's on a movie set, he thinks he's like an important person or whatever. But, again, that's where I like to go with the show, where it's, we all have struggles and we all have things that are going on. There's this whole other generation that's grown up on social media. Like, they had tablets. I mean, now I guess even under 10 years old, but for us, I know we're dating ourselves, but we were in college when social media was like there. So for us, it was a way to connect with old friends. You were always doing our highlight reel and the good stuff, which is great. I mean, I think that it's good to show the good things that you're going through, but you've taken your career too, is to really be someone who's been very open, and you are sincere, and you do care about people. And that's why you're driving. When people look at what you're putting out there, it's like they listen to you and they believe you and they respect you.
Yeah, I do. And I would say I agree with you so much on just being like a good person, like kind and genuine and trying to do your best. I think that has been part of my career success. Here in Sacramento, I'm in different leadership programs, and I spend a lot of time volunteering and raising money for programs that I believe in and causes that are truly meaningful to me, giving back to the community and truly being genuine and sincere about like why you're doing it and how you're doing it. And finding those things that you're passionate about, I think, are the stepping stones to having a fulfilling life, right? I mean, certainly looking cool on social media can bring a certain amount of temporary or momentary happiness, because you're like, okay, I am like, there's that sense of like that reward to know that you're doing enough good, but to really find other ways to involve yourself with the community and to give back in a really genuine way. Like I just always encourage people to like really focus on like what is their passion, not necessarily what's going to help their career, but like really like what's going to make them happy at the end of the day. The experiences you had before we got to like where we are today, they really made us who we are. But that doesn't mean we can't decide who we want to be in the future. But I think reflecting on the past and using those stories and the narratives and what we've experienced in our memories to kind of guide us into who we want to be in the future. And, we're going to have those pains and hurts, but also like all the memories of the joys to kind of help propel us and keep us moving. And I know that I get that from having just personal one-on-one experiences with people, and just knowing, that they're still striving. There's a lot of pain in the world. And if you're still waking up and striving, it's an incredible way to keep moving forward.
You said it right there. And I always try to remember to put myself in check. I'm lucky to be here in a studio. We're able to talk. You're in Sacramento. You're doing great with your career. I'm here in LA, and we're able to have a good conversation right now and to have some luxuries. So whatever I'm going through, it's very, very minimal compared to other parts of the world where people are struggling. And so I always remind myself to put myself in check. And at the same time, it's like that's where I wanted to go with the show as well too, where if you're going through something or get to the core of things. And I just felt like for years I was not being true to myself. I mean, when I started going to therapy, and I mean, you were a motivator for that too, because there was scars like what I mentioned earlier about just like childhood, and you look at certain friendships that didn't last. And even during the pandemic, there was a lot of uncertainty. Me, I was like you. I mean, it was like up at the crack of dawn. We were like working constantly. I mean, we would have fun. And yes, we traveled and did stuff, but we were very motivated and dedicated. So it was like literally after a decade of just nonstop work, it was like, what am I going to do? It was cool because the podcast idea came up. That's why even just the help of having some therapy during that time, we did it online. I think one of the attractions I think I had with movies was really when you talk about kind of present parents, I didn't always feel like I knew what was happening, or there was a lot, like as I got older, I would find out certain things and be like, oh, that's why this happened, or that's why we went on this trip, or that's why this person was distant at that point in time. You know, it's like you start to understand dilemmas in family and relationships, and then sometimes we shut off. And when I shut off listening to a song or a movie, or I think at a young age, I just remember the only time people I loved were connected were watching movies. So I think that's why I was kind of drawn to that at first with the entertainment industry. It was like, oh, you know, this is the only time we're like laughing and having a time together. So I'm really mindful as to what that is for a lot of us. And now it's, as I've gotten older, it's really reading more, having those kinds of having good relationships, and you realize the value in a lot of that.
Oh yeah. And I think, I think to your point is that self-exploration, whether that's therapy, reading, kind of digging deep within that reflection of the hobbies that maybe that you're enjoying. But I do want to loop back around, because I think you're making some points about during this time of exploration, whether it's COVID or a hard time that someone may be going through, or even a good time that they may be experiencing, like, okay, like now I'm doing great. Like, what are my next steps? But being able to have someone to talk to, and especially a therapist who's kind of trained and walking you down the road or the path for your own exploration. Therapists are never there to like give you the answers. That's at least from my experience. It's more of, how do you blend the art and the science? How do you learn how to be the best version of yourself, along with having someone kind of help guide you into that self-reflection? And I think that we can all benefit from having that ability to take a look inside ourselves and say, okay, like, what are the things that are my challenges? What are the things that are my strengths? And like, what are the things that are getting me stuck? Right. And I know that there have been lots of points in my life where I've been stuck, and I'm like, okay, like, what's the route I'm going to take now to be a better version of myself? Where if I've taken 3 steps back and I'm not the person that I had hoped to be, like, how do I get back on track? And knowing that whatever you see on social media isn't the 3 steps back, right? It's not like what you were saying about like, oh, you kind of did a rewind, when COVID started, because everything changed so fast. But like, now, how do we move forward and use those things that were getting us, the roadblocks, I guess, if you will. And then how do we kind of move around them, maybe in a more graceful way, or maybe we just got to plow right through them, right? Like, just make the change and like stick to it. And as uncomfortable as it might be, we just got to kind of hold on to like the hope and faith, that trust in ourselves, that it's going to be okay. And we're going to get there. And we have the support of family and friends. And I know not everyone has the support of family and friends that, kind of is what we all would hope, but to kind of hold on to that hope in ourselves, that we redirect and we refocus and we find those support groups, right? Like, if something isn't working for you, like, change it.
And I have to remind myself too, because I mean, even as I've gotten older, it's harder I feel like I was attached to stuff even when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, actually, I take that back. It's gotten easier as I've gotten older to really shift gears. I mean, I feel like we do hold on to those memories or good times, but I recently moved, and it's just coming out of like this post-COVID era. I'm like, it's just I need to change it up, listen to some new music, watch some new things, talk to some new people. And this was really a time too where I felt like we reconnected. I couldn't even believe it. I got invited to this fashion show, and then with less than 24 hours afterwards, you text me and say, hey, I'm in LA, I'm going to fashion. I'm like, is it this one? I'm like, no way. I mean, it's one of those things that's kismet, it's meant to be. So it's like and it's really paying attention to those signs. And I feel like even the last couple of years, the journey that you've been on and the journey that I've been on, I feel like it's just really, we needed that self-exploration time. So now that after, these years of more enclosed because of COVID, it's like coming back out, it was like you were one of the first people that was like, this feels right. And this is why we had this connection for so long. And then you get Sacramento Journal top 40 under 40. I've got to ask, how did they approach you and what was it like to receive that?
Yeah, so the Business Journal every year puts out nominations, and I believe they get between 500 and 1,000 nominations every year from people in the community who nominate individuals for the top 40 under 40. And then there's a panel of judges, and they go through all these nominations. These judges whittle it down to 40 people, and I guess I have to be humble and look at myself and just, appreciate every single person who's come into my life along the way, because the journey is kind of what got me to this point. I have not done it alone. Certainly, it's fantastic to sit here in front of you and reap the reward of getting the title and appreciating that. But also, it really has been every single person, including you and the friends that I've met along the way, that have always encouraged me to kind of keep striving, to have those nights where you stay up all night and cry about things you got and didn't deserve, or the parents you wanted and didn't get, and certain things in life that we all feel like kids deserve to have parents that love them and support them and protect them, and sometimes that's just not reality. And I think along my journey and working really hard, I think it's easy to say like, oh, like it's easy just to kind of get through life when you've had certain gifts of, parents that are wealthy, or family that has a good name, or already famous, maybe in your experience. But really, like, striving on your own 2 feet and working really hard, appreciating all the lessons that come, whether it's advice from a mentor or crashing and burning at work. It's taking all those little pieces, kind of piecing them together. And that's, I guess, where I am at now, just appreciating the journey along the way. And that's, I think, what the 40 under 40 is. It's just a culmination of these experiences in life that have encouraged me to keep hopeful and keep striving, to keep wanting to do better. And I'm not looking backwards. I'm not going to quit. Like, I'm still going to keep and trying to inspire others with my story, and then also give back in any way I can.
And that's what you've done with your career and continue to do. And that is why the top 40 and 40, those struggles that we know, or even, we feel like people have certain advantages. And that was the thing that I really had to confront. And it took me to like age 30. And it's like, it's one of those things that I'll admit, like I think we all look back at times and want to beat ourselves up over the mistake. I was like, oh, why didn't I know this at the time? Or for me, it was like growing up in LA, there was this time, because of certain people in my life that you're connected to, you see people are a little bit strange, or you're like, and then for me it was like always keeping a guard up, not really knowing what people's demeanors were. And then I remember being in elementary school that year, I went with my mom to work, and I had this small part in Naked Gun 3, and then I remember going to the premiere, and I could see you could see my mom in the shop. We got cut out, so you could see my little spiky mullet in the background. And that was when I learned who O.J. Simpson was. And then we fast forward 2 months later, he's all over the news. And then Robert Kardashian Sr. is my dad's good friend, and Robert Shapiro's son's going to the school that I'm at. And it's weird, like these parallels. And so you're kind of processing this at that time. And then we end off the summer with my mom explaining to me that, oh, your cousin just decided to marry Michael Jackson. And you're just kind of like, okay, how does this happen? It was one of those things where for me, it was like, being 8 and, someone from I remember there was this kid who came up to me at school, and he was, I think, trying to be nice, like, oh, I think it's cool that they got married. But I think maybe he came from a sincere, but that didn't stop. There were definitely kids asking me if certain things happened because of the accusations that were made against Michael. There were parents who even as I got older too, would kind of crack jokes. Oh, so what was he like? Or did anything happen? Or there was, you deal with that. And then of course, you fast forward, he passes away, and everyone kind of takes back that they ever made those kind of remarks, or they look at things in a different light. And then so for me, it was like really struggling with, what are people's agendas? Do people actually like me for me? And I felt like even when I was going through a lot of it in my 20s, based on my environment, and I remember like at that time, I felt like I needed to be in that environment to matter. You realize like certain members of your family control things, and without them, you're nothing. And I just felt like, really, I mean, you were one of the only people that I trusted in my 20s. And I like that we had that, whether it was, I mean, you would stay over and we would talk all night, or you and I would go out to dinner and I'd like stay at your place and we'd just, watch a movie and talk about things. And so it was always like a place where I felt safe, or even just like visiting you and your family, going on trips with you both. So I thank you for being that person to me in that life, in my life. And then when I was 30, it was time to end the cycle. So that's when I've seen certain members of my family go down certain roads and not have the tools and not be able to do things on their own. And it was just kind of like, what, I can't take it anymore. And I can't be, connected to something that just is so draining. I have to know what I can do. So it took years of me just kind of dismissing a lot of things I grew up with and saying like, I'm starting things my own way. I felt like it did take almost a lifetime to let go. There were baby steps, but it was like that push. And it was right when I did Undateable John and Jack and Cocaine. Jack and Cocaine's a movie. I wasn't like doing cocaine to get over it, just saying for people. But it's, it's those journeys of really finding independent film festivals, finding new creative outlets. So those were the hardships that I carried. And your insight was always something that I considered. And it took me a while to really get into therapy, but you were a motivator for that. And you continue to be an inspiration with everything that you do, and to continuing that journey and helping me really put myself in check and make me think that I just needed myself. And thank you for helping me discover that.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't think there's any bigger compliment in the world than being a good friend. And I don't know, it just makes me feel like incredible and warm and gushy a bit thinking about our adventures, but also like our deep conversations. But we did have some incredible adventures together. And I do think the adventures built that bond and that trust. And I think ultimately, maybe the point we're making during this podcast as well is that like the power of relationships, right? To kind of inspire each other. And then also for that growth, surrounding yourself with people who are going to challenge you when you kind of mess up and make you question, am I making those right moves forward, or is this, the direction I want to go down? And, but then also to like share in those joys. And talking to you now and having this like ability to reflect together is pretty incredible just in itself. But truly, I think the people are listening out there, to find friends that can challenge you, that aren't going to let you kind of make decisions without that reflection, and challenge you to think about the choices you're making. But then also that I think what you've talked about too is like that trust that, the world can have people in it that are looking to take advantage, or just inadvertently people are trying to survive. And if they can use something about you to take that next step, like they may very well even inadvertently use you along their path. So to really find people that match your spirit and energy and love, and have that ability to reflect and keep you safe, right? I think there's so much of that. And I think a lot of that's come out just in this conversation, that sincerity, that vulnerability, and that ability to feel safe. Even though like I know that people are going to watch this, I still feel like I'm only just talking to you, and it's kind of just, it's wonderful.
It is. And then just that openness that you've always had, and you always put me in check. And there was any time when we first met, I said, coming over the arrhythmia, and, you were there with me in the hospital when I had to go in for a surgery. And so you were always a friend to, it was like day or night. We were always there for each other. And so when I really look back on that journey and those discussions, and I look at where, other people I care about who aren't with us. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of people I have been happy to let go of. I know we don't have a list of certain people who are toxic, but those people do teach you a lesson. And I meet them now, and in my field especially, I meet so many people along the time daily who I never know where they're coming from, but you know how to keep them as at a distance, and you know what's for real. And I think that's where, even with all the social media that's out there, for what you do, is like you have the tools and the work and the credentials that people listen to you, and you have the credibility. And I do feel like there's enough outlets now to help people. And if I can do anything, I'm the last person to give advice. Like if the second I start to say, oh, you should do, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. All I can do is share what I've been through. And if that connects with you and helps you along the way, then great. But, it's because I feel like even just some of the role models I had growing up, they didn't, whether it was the way that they grew up or making certain things look fun, whether it was going out and partying. And I remembered when we were coming, I mean, that's just the thing when I laugh about our industry, because when we were, just in college and graduating, it's like Entourage was the hottest show in the world, and everybody wanted to be Ari, you know that. I mean, everyone we worked with, everyone in the industry, that was their thing. It was this bro fantasy of like, oh yeah, I want to know someone famous and go to all these parties, and I want to be like Ari, I want to be the guy. And I felt like so many people that I was working with were emulating that and aspiring to be that. So then with the light being shed, there's been some closure, to be like, wow, those people who were gaslighting me and saying, this is the way it is, do what the boss tells you to do, and you have to go along with this, or you're nothing, you have to. And I felt like so many colleagues of mine, either whether they stayed in the industry or left because they had a boss or someone of power who was making them feel a certain way, they didn't have the tools until the last few years, where that's where I do feel where social media and addressing certain world issues have come through podcasts and through communication, where that it's more accessible. We're able to hear different people's journeys and different people's stories. And even if it's just someone, I mean, I find the best sometimes, I love that we're sitting here talking because it's us and, just our friendship and our history. But then when and I'm sure you get this in your line of work too, where there's someone who has a completely different background, came up a certain way, and then you find those ways of connecting. Or, even if someone, I was at a festival 2 weeks ago and have someone who I'd never met say like, oh, I saw something on your show and that really connected with me. I think that's what really gets me going and motivates me to want to continue doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And I do have people, whether it was previously when I worked as a therapist or even now at the law firm, and people say, well, you don't have kids. Like, how can you know what I'm going through? You've never been through a divorce. How can you understand? And I think ultimately have you ever experienced pain? Have you ever experienced loss? Have you experienced love or joy? And if you can answer yes to any of those questions, right, we have a human experience that can connect us to others as long as we're curious and open-minded. And I think to that point about being curious and open-minded, you were talking about your bosses that, you felt were limiting you from your own personal successes. We have to be creative, right? And we have to find our own niche for how we're going to make an impact on the world and what makes us special and how we're going to do that. And I know that I've done that in my career, my sister being a family law attorney and then me getting my doctorate in psychology. It's not a wonder that our parents got divorced, right? And that had a big impact on us. And, we have our family law tagline is our family's here to protect yours, but it may sound kitschy, but we really take that to heart and we really believe in it. And, we try to treat our clients like they're our family, and we do try to protect them because, we were in it. And while my sister could have gone and been a lawyer for a law firm and I could have kept working as a therapist, we decided to be creative, right? That, when we first started this endeavor, people are like, why are you doing this? You'd make a lot more money if you just were your own attorney, working for someone else and, kind of getting your experience for my sister. And then for me, I didn't want to be a therapist and just have an office and have people come in and tell me their stories. I wanted to really be proactive and make changes where I could see them happening. And of course that happens in therapy, but it's at a different rate. And it wasn't, for me on my speed. I really wanted to be like on the ground, playing chess and trying to solve problems. And I feel like I am doing that, but it took my sister and I branching out from like what was the expectation of being in our 20s and having a career path set. And saying like, no, look, we're going to do something different. And we have, and it's been incredible. And, I think our clients testaments to like what we do and how much we care. And then, just being able to sit here with you today and talk about the journey and talk about the accomplishments and being proud of them. Right. I think there's so much in the world where like, oh, look at what I'm doing on social media, but then also like, don't, be excited about it. And I think being excited about the accomplishments and like having that drive to keep making the changes in the world and giving back. And same with you, like using your experiences to tell your truth and then, tell your story on your podcast and really impact change where you don't even think it's going to happen. Like having that person come up to you at the festival and say, oh, what you said during your podcast really impacted me. And it spoke to me. There's things that we do every day that we just miss and don't appreciate, like our impact on others. And, I'm appreciative that I get to be here with you, and I made an impact in your life and you made an impact on mine. And just, it does feel like full circle.
It is. And on that note, because that's where the journey went, where even I felt like there were moments when I was, like I said, like starting therapy, things were good. I became much more business minded, and in the sense of where I was just really, I felt like I was going through the closure, going through the steps, but still there was this thing. I wasn't always enjoying the journey. And that was something that you reminded me or told me it was okay to do very early on when we met. And I felt like that's really been encompassed this last year with coming out of the pandemic, really starting some new stuff on my own. And I mean, even like with the festival, there was this moment where so many times when there's a process I go through. It's like, I got to wake up, I got to work out. I'm very regimented about like, if I have an event or a premiere that, if it's there's certain things, if it's something else that I'm not a part of, it's like, okay, I can go and have fun. But if it's, something that I'm personally involved, I'm like, whoa, okay. But you know what, I really let it go. And I was like, I'm not going to try to control anything. I'm going to just take what's here. And I feel like just the sense of really being a present person has really come out of, going to therapy and having these life experiences, having these, someone like you in my life who understands that. So on that note, I just really, again, Alea, I can't thank you enough for your time, for sharing your journey. And, thank you for being someone who's moved my life. And at the same time, you just continue to just strive and excel in everything that you do, whether it's, creating your own practice with your sister, whether it's the different activities and the different programs that you've been involved with in Sacramento. There is a reason why you are Sacramento Business Journals Top 40 Under 40, and I can't wait to see what other titles you get. Is there anything that you would like to say or share with anyone?
Yes, thank you so much. I, of course, just love being able to talk with you, and I look forward to being able to come visit you in LA and have some more adventures, maybe a Dodgers game. Maybe we'll do a Kings game, because, the Kings are really picking up speed this year in basketball. So
I know I got to get up to Sac too. I miss Sac. I love it up there. Yeah, I know you're going to take me up there, and I know how it's a big thing for you with the Kings. So like the second I get there, you're going to get me the jersey and the hat and be like, no, this is we're done. How we go for it.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do it. So yeah, and if you ever like to have me on the show, if any of your watchers have questions or need a boost, I am always happy to kind of lend a helping hand and tell people about my journey as well.
You heard it. Everyone give it up for my dear friend, D.r Alea Baron. She's the Director of Client Relations at Baron Family Law, and she was awarded and honored as one of Sacramento Business Journals Top 40 Under 40 2022. Alea, you've always held a dear place in my life and in my heart, and you continue this epic journey of yours, and I look forward to more adventures with the two of us, and you always have an open spot here.
All right. Thanks, Kash. Have a great day.
You too.